Hello everyone and welcome back to Alteryx Tutorials. I am Mark Thompson. Today's session we're going to be covering weekly challenge number 189. And it's ironic that this challenge came up when it did because I just recently had this question, and when I rank things, I tend to use a multi-row and a filter. And somebody brought up, what about the idea that you can just use a sample and take the end sample? And that's true, but I'll show you the limitations and why that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. I originally had them both done this way, but for the video, I did this lower part like this just so that we could talk through it. Let's go ahead and jump on in. And the idea is to find out what artist had the most top 10 and top 100 hits during each decade. And we've got this information in the song rank and the artist and the year and the lyrics and the source. First thing we want to do is identify what decades. So we're going to go ahead and throw a formula on here that says, hey, what's the decade? And for the moment, we're going to modify this, but for the moment, we're just going to throw the year in here. Say, we've got it duplicated over here. And by the way, note that I am calling this a string. Okay? That's one of the reasons you want to duplicate it is I believe this one is a number and we want it to be a string separate. And we want to see the evolution of this. Now that we've got this decade, we're going to use Regex and we're going to do something I haven't shown before. And we've got this regular expression and we've got two different pieces to it. This and this. And we're calling out those groups, and we're doing a replace. Now, notice that I've got a $1. What that means is I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm going to, in this case, add on a 0. And you can see the result down here of 196. And if I scroll on down, you'll see, and it's got the space and it's got the 0. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to hit decade and I'm going to get rid of the leading and trailing and I'm going to get rid of all white space. And now we've got it where it looks like a decade. Now I'm going to back up for just a minute to the Regex and I'm going to show you what happens. So if I wanted to, I could go 000 and if I hit run, I want you to take a look down here and it's got all of these. Right? If I come here and I go $2, that is referencing this section here. And then if I give a space and I give a 0, watch what happens at that point. It will have the 196, the 5, and the 0. Notice how they're spaced out. Notice how they're spaced out. If I wanted to go ahead and put this 0 right next to this, it doesn't work, okay? It thinks, see? It thinks it's looking for call-out grouping number 20, and there is no call-out grouping number 20. Now, what about if I go ahead and do this? How many of you can guess before I hit the run? You'd be correct. It goes ahead and puts them together because that $ makes the difference. Now, if I went and did this, this is what you've got. If you haven't used a $ grouping before, I could do this. I could go $2, $2. How many of you can guess what the result is? Exactly, 55. If I wanted to repeat a grouping, $2, space, 000. Can you guess what's going to happen? Let's put those right together. I'm going to put those together. I'm going to space these. I'm going to put the 2. I'm going to space. I'm going to give the zeros. Let's see what the result is. 196, 196. Notice these two are right together. You can do that because the $ identifies the grouping. Okay? In our case, we want the 1 and the 0. Unfortunately, because it's like this, if I tried to do that like that, it's thinking I'm calling out group 10, and there is no such thing. So we do that. We run it. We've got our 196, 7, 8, 2000s, whatever, and we've got a 0. We then come and we clean it up, and you can see it turns it into a decade. Next thing we do, and you know me, I get rid of the stuff I don't need. So let's come in here, and I don't really care what the title of the song is or what the lyrics are doing. We're going to need the artist. So we can't get rid of that. And source. Source? Do we need source? What does source even mean? I don't know that source even means something, so let's go ahead and get rid of it. Let's go ahead and run it. Now, we're going down 2 channels, one for our top 10 and one for our top 100. Let's talk about the top 10 first of all. Okay, here we've got anything that wasn't ranked in the top 10, we're going to filter it out, so less than 11. Next thing we want to know is by artist, by decade. Oh, you know what? We can go ahead and get rid of year too. Year also, can't we? Let's go ahead and do that. So now we have the rank and the artist and the decade. Let's go ahead and summarize that. We're going to summarize it by rank and artist and decade. So we got the group by the decade, the group by the artist, and we get the count. How many times did that artist show up? All right, and we're going to summarize that. And the next thing you do, we want to sort it. And what do we want to sort? We want to sort by decade, and we want to do the count descending. Now, mind you, we're only talking about the top 10. Now, here's where we rank them, and here's why it's important. I'm going to pull this screen up. You can see the formula over here that says, essentially, if the row minus 1 on rank is 0, then 1. Else, if the count of the row equals the count of the row minus 1. So if these two are equal, then we do the rank minus 1. So we make that equal to the rank above it. Otherwise, we take the rank and we add 1 to it. Okay? Now, what you find is that you've got more than 1, right? You've got all of these that are ranked number 1. In this approach, you capture that. You can capture all the ones that are ranked number 1 for their decade. And then you can summarize, and we're going to group by decade, and we're going to concatenate the artists and how many that is. And we can see in here that we've got all of these different groups that competed, and they all ended up with 2. Only the Bee Gees had 4 in the 70s. Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston tied. Mariah Carey, Matchbox. And you know what? I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to do a little housekeeping thing that says concatenate, and I've got a comma. I'm going to add a space. Notice how these are right together, right there. I'm going to run this again. And now our concatenation. Michael Jackson, comma, space, Whitney Houston. And you can see that we've got more than 1 group or star that had the same number. Now let's come down here and talk about the top 100, where we simply say, okay, this is the top 100. That's what our list is, the Billboard Top 100. We just want to count by decade. So we've got the decades counted out. And we've got the groups. But mind you, there is going to be more than 1. So we group how many times did the Mysterians and Fruit Gum Company and Aaron Neville and Aretha Franklin, how many times did they have a top 100 hit in the decade? Let's go ahead and sort those. Beatles had the most. Supremes. Now I want to take a look at some of these other decades, right? Because in here, what we're doing is we now take a sample. We've got it sorted, and we want the first one. Well, the problem when you capture the first one, you only capture the first one. If we come up here and we do a data check, we can see that in the 2000s, Kelly Clarkson and Pink both had 13 hits. Taylor Swift was alone, the Beatles were alone, but in the 70s, the Bee Gees and Elton John tied for 12. When you're looking at this, understand what you're trying to achieve, right? That's why there are these two methods. And somebody asked, why did I use this method versus this? If you can be absolutely sure that there's only one and there's not going to be any more, then you can go ahead and do that and you capture it. But you will capture only the first one. Okay, something to be on guard for. That should wrap it up for today. I hope this has been insightful, a little bit new on the regex, and a little bit new on the sample versus the multi-row ranking. I am Mark Thompson, and these are Alteryx tutorials. Have yourself a great day.